What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Dink Master 81 here. I kind of made this video, I haven't made a video in a while, and I kind of wanted to do this video because I think people are making, I guess what I should say is bad decisions fishing. Basically what I want to talk about today is fishing line, but also, most importantly, fishing knots and different fishing knots to tie with each type of fishing line. Before I get into this video and before anybody gets offended, the first thing I want to say is the strongest fishing knot is the knot that you can tie properly. If I talk about a fishing knot here and you just can't for some reason tie it properly, that's okay. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that. Definitely, this is an opinion-based video, but basically the strongest knot is the knot that you can tie properly every single time. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, actually, I'm talking about monofilament line, knots to use with monofilament line. Then I'm going to talk about braided line, and the reason why I'm mentioning those two first is because they're pretty simple, and I think pretty universally people agree with mono and braid. And then the last line I'm going to talk about is fluorocarbon or copolymer fishing lines, which I feel a lot of people disagree on which knots they like to tie. So the first knot. So for mono, basically there's a lot of knots you can tie really well with mono. You have your improved clinch or cinch, however you like to say it. There's also uni knots. Some newer anglers, I actually used to tie a uni knot all the time. The only thing about the uni knot is it's just not that strong, and that'll come back a little bit later in the video. But then basically the two knots I like to tie for mono and, well, I'll talk about fluoro later. But for mono, I like tying Palomar knot, like a standard Palomar, and then I also like tying the San Diego Jam. Basically, if you want just before I get into the whole video, if you want a universal knot to tie every type of fishing line with, the San Diego Jam is just your go-to knot. I mean, if you want one knot and maybe one or two different variations of that knot, for braided line to tie fishing line, learn the San Diego Jam. I actually learned it a couple years ago. Very good knot. So with monofilament, I like tying standard Palomar because it's just strong as hell, and the San Diego Jam. The reason why I kind of lean towards the San Diego Jam with Palomar, the reason why I lean towards, I keep cutting out. The reason why I lean towards the San Diego Jam over the Palomar knot is when you actually tie that knot and you clip off the tag end and everything, the San Diego Jam wastes less line. That's it. I don't really experience any type of difference in strength or anything of that nature. So I think those are two very suitable knots. And then a close third would probably be the improved clinch and uni knot. So next I want to talk about braided line. Braided line is going to be very similar to monofilament, but you just change kind of how you tie the knot. So with braided line, when I tie a Palomar, I like tying a double Palomar. And really what double Palomar has a couple of variations. The one that I tie, and I'll also show it to you at the end of the video, is where you actually run when you have your two standing lines running through the eye of the hook or your spinnerbait or whatever. You basically just run it through again and then tie a standard Palomar knot. That's all I do. And then the San Diego Jam, I do something very similar. Is when I tie the San Diego Jam with braided line, I just, instead of running through the eye once at the beginning of the knot, I run through it twice. That's it. And again, I'll also show you that at the end of the video. So the last line I want to talk about is fluorocarbon. I feel like this is where a lot of people disagree. If you're having trouble tying knots with fluorocarbon, this is definitely the part of the video that you need to listen to. So let's hop right into it. So when I started fishing, I specifically tied a uni knot because a uni knot was just extremely easy to tie, and it was fairly strong, at least for what I was doing. But when I seriously got into fishing and started fishing bigger baits, A-rigs, started flipping, doing all those sorts of things, the uni knot, it basically became useless in the sense that sometimes I would break off on fish, but also sometimes I would, almost every snag I got, I would break that fluorocarbon. So that knot was pretty, out of the running is my favorite knot. Then I started tying. I was looking at what people recommended for fishing knots, and I came upon the improved clinch cinch knot or whatever, however we want to say it. And that knot, the thing about the improved clinch, and that's a lot of people's favorite knot, is it's really strong. It is a very strong knot. The problem that I found with the improved clinch knot is two things. So actually tying it without burning the line 100% of the time was my phone was ringing. Is a little difficult. Even if you had your wet line really wet and you actually tied it properly, sometimes that knot would just burn regardless of what you did. And the other thing is I found it burns a lot more when you use a super stiff line. So for example, I like using this Vicious Fluoro. That's actually a really cheap option that I use. I mostly use a lot more expensive lines. I like using Sunline Shooter, which is actually a very stiff line as well. Is when you get into those stiffer fluorocarbons, those higher diameter fluoros. See, improved clinch is just a little bit harder to tie. I mean, and when I'm out on the water fishing, I'm in a kayak most of the time, and I'm out there, in 2-foot waves, just rocking back and forth in the kayak trying to tie a knot. I really don't want any difficulty tying that knot. I want to just be able to tie it and go. So I kind of was looking for a knot that was as strong as the improved clinch, but was as easy to tie as the uni. And then I came across, and this is when I started fishing the San Diego Jam a couple years ago. The thing about it is it's extremely easy to tie when you learn how to do it. It's a little bit more complicated than the uni, of course, but it's a lot easier to tie, and it's really strong. Is what I found is that when you tie the improved clinch knot, you bend out, like if you're in a snag, you'll bend out treble hooks, but you really won't bend out single hooks. Is what I found the San Diego Jam. Actually, I wish I had that spinnerbait. I actually lost that spinnerbait later in the day, but what happened was that big meaty spinnerbait hook. This exact spinnerbait, I actually bent this thing out. I was using I think it was 17-pound fluoro. Bent it out on a snag with the San Diego Jam knot. It's a very strong knot, and it's a lot easier to tie. So I believe that with fluorocarbon, I think the San Diego Jam is the best knot, period. A lot of people tie Palomar. Now, the one thing I'll say about a Palomar is if you do tie it properly, it is fairly strong, but just the way the Palomar is designed, basically you have like a loop that's around. It's hard to explain, but when I tie it later, I might talk about it. But when it's around the main line, there's actually a loop, and actually the harder you pull on this line, the harder it pulls in that loop. And with fluorocarbon, with mono, it's not a big deal, but when you're doing fluoro, it'll actually cut that line right there. I really don't recommend. You'll definitely get. You might not break off on fish per se, but you'll definitely break off on snags. Which with the San Diego Jam, I found that I don't break off a lot on snags unless it's really, really snagged in there. So I'm actually gonna I'm gonna get that camera on the head, and we're actually gonna show you how to tie some of these knots. Alright guys, so hopefully you guys can see the table there. I really hope this comes out good when I look at it later in editing. But so basically what I'm going to start with mono. I talked about mono. I like throwing both a San Diego Jam and a Palomar knot. And with that, I'm actually going to, I hope you guys can see this line. This is actually 25-pound Maxima. It's a very thick line. It's green too, so hopefully you guys can see that really well. So when you tie the Palomar, the first thing you want to do is first thing I like to do is I like making, kind of about 6 inches, 6-inch loop. So you have the loop here, you have the end of the line over in this hand. You have a loop, and you kind of just go like that. I think if you've been fishing, you've probably heard of a Palomar. It's super easy to tie. So you run it through there, and you make an overhand knot. Now there's a little debate on what you do after this. What I like to do is do not cinch this overhand knot down. Do not, just leave it kind of sitting there. What you want to do is you want to take this and you want to put the whole bait through that loop you just made. Where's my tag end at? This is doing very bad. I'll explain how to do this knot. But you put it through that entire loop. Like I said, pretty much if you bass fish, you know what a Palomar knot is. But then what you want to do is you want to draw up this line. You'll have something like this. what I like to do is, a lot of people will just cinch it down right here. I like to wet it. And then I like put my finger right here. And this kind of acts as like a giant loop. So what you do is you do that. You see you have the knot formed right there, and all you do is you just slide it down. Tie it. There you go. Like I mentioned earlier, you get a pretty long tag end when you do that. Actually, let me go grab some scissors that I forgot. So, you have a really long tag end here. Actually, this is the tag end right here. And that's just wasted fishing line. You cut that off, that's the knot. But you waste that bit of line. You waste quite a bit of fishing line. It's kind of annoying. Especially when you're buying, you know, mono ain't very expensive, but you know, this Maxima is actually fairly expensive for a mono. So what I usually like to do, I'll cut this knot off. We're gonna tie another one on. I really like San Diego Jam. So the way you tie this knot, and I'm gonna tie it with fluoro as well, if you guys don't see this one very well. But so I like to do, so I like to go through the thing, go through the thing. But I use these two fingers, you know, like you're making scissors when you're playing rock, paper, scissors. Put one through there, between the tag end and the main line. You put one on the outside of the main line. What you do is you create a loop right there. So what you're doing is you're basically, this is a loop, you have the tag end right here, the main line's running up this way. What you want to do is you run this knot, usually I usually run it 6 times. 4, 5, 6. And what you want to do is you run it through here. Now here's the trick. So what you do is you put it through there, and you can kind of take your thumb out of there sometimes. Sometimes you don't have to, but basically this line has to be running out of this top loop the same way that the main line is. You see how that's, the loop's right here, the main line and the tag end are coming out of the same side of the loop. If you don't do that, it's not as strong. So this is the point right here where you kind of see that knot forming. You wet it. There's the knot. And you just slide it down. Now, with both mono and fluorocarbon, that knot is just bulletproof. I mean, it is very, very strong knot. I told you I've been, you know, jig hooks out on this thing. It sounds very bizarre, but like if you're using like a finesse jig or a football jig, I've been out finesse jig, football jig hooks on this with this knot, and really strong fishing line, of course. But so those are the two knots I like tying for mono. I also tie this knot with fluoro. I am going to tie it with fluoro just to show you guys what it looks like. Hopefully you guys can actually see when I do that, because the fluoro is really clear and it's kind of hard to see. That's why I use the green Maxima. So actually, while I'm talking about it, let's just hop right into that. Let's just go into fluorocarbon. So right here, as I explained, I got 20-pound Vicious. It's a very stiff line. Let's actually cut that off. I'm actually going to do the same thing, the exact same thing. I'm going to try it again. So what you do is you put it through the eye, rock, paper, scissors. You make the loop. Do 6 times. You put it through the first loop. You make sure it's coming out of the top of the second. You wet it. You cinch it down. Skirt slide up, but as you can see, I did it a lot faster. I've gotten to the point where I can just, you know, look at it and just do it. It is a very, very nice knot, and you see you don't have a crazy long tag end. So when you're tying mainline, if you tie mainline fluoros or even leaders, I think leaders are a little bit more important, but you don't waste as much line, so you don't have to retie your leaders as often. Very great knot. And what I will say again is this knot is the only knot you should tie for fluoro. Do not try the Palomar Knot with fluoro. As reasons I explained earlier. If you have any more questions about that, if I didn't explain it as well as I maybe could have, shoot me a direct message me or comment on the video. We can kind of get that sorted out. So the last line, we'll talk about braid. This is 65-pound Suffix Performance. I'm going to do both the modified San Diego Jam and then the double Palomar Knot that I tie. So get a little bit more line out here. So the only thing you do differently with the Palomar when I tie it is you have your loop here. You just run it through the eye twice. That's it. Super easy. Like I said, mono and braid for tying knots is actually fairly easy. It's where fluorocarbon is where people kind of mess up, in my opinion. You do that. Put the bait through there. And you see how with this braid it kind of tried to cinch itself down. You kind of work it back up. There you go. I'm not wetting it just because I don't feel like it. That knot is, and the reason why you put the extra loop around the eye with braid is especially this stuff. This is Suffix Performance. It's a very slick braid. You just don't want that knot slipping. It's just a little extra assurance. I don't think I've ever had the original Palomar knot slip, but I think it's stronger. I really don't have any problems with braided line and knots. Super clean knot. Actually gonna cut that off now. I'm gonna show you guys a San Diego Jam. This is probably gonna be the final knot we would show you. And again, as I explained earlier, this is just a variation of the regular San Diego Jam. Basically what you do is when you put the line through it first, before you make your scissors, you just put it through the eye again. And as I stated with the Palomar, it just gives a little extra bite. Kind of helps it from, Now with braid, I've told you I've really liked the San Diego Jam for fluoro and mono. I really do feel that the double Palomar is stronger than this knot. But they're both very strong. I've never had them fail. For some reason, when you tie that Palomar, it just feels solid. Like it just, as you can see there, that knot didn't kind of cinch as well as it wanted to. Just use your tag end to tighten it down. Slide the rest of the knot down. There you go. And that, my friends, is a solid knot as well. So if you want one knot, I think the one thing I'm trying to say is if you want one knot for everything, San Diego Jam. If you want, different knots for everything, I prefer the San Diego Jam for mono. I prefer the San Diego Jam for fluoro, and for braid, I really like that double Palomar that I tie. It is very strong. So yeah. So that's a video for you guys. If you have any questions, again, like I said, put it in the comments, and I can definitely try to address those questions. And I'll talk to you guys soon.